Dr. D. Morrow by Paul John Lim, Part 6. Last time, Letty was heading for Morrow Hall, and she had no idea what would happen when she got there, or who she would meet. Soon she was on the train heading west, first into London, then she changed at Liverpool Street Station and took the line north, finally a branch line to Bishop Somerton for the remainder of the journey. She took the only spare seat in the second-class carriage, next to an elderly gentleman. He introduced himself as Ezekiel. He offered to put her bag on the rack. He placed the rucksack on the rack above them and then sat down. Ezekiel said, "I had business in London. I needed to see a physician friend, but now I'm on the way home. You look like you're in pain, miss." Letitia, "I am. I had an accident. I was a trapeze artist and I had a fall." Ezekiel, "I think I saw an article in the Times about an attempt at a triple somersault that ended badly." Letitia replied, "Yes, it was me, but it was a double somersault, not a triple." Ezekiel then replied, "Couldn't have been you. The girl broke her back and is paralysed from the waist down. The headline, I think, read Fallen Angel Tragedy." Letitia, "Oh my God! Poor Colette. It must have been her. She's my best friend." Ezekiel quickly replied, "I'm so very sorry. The story did mention another girl who had failed a few days before to do the double somersault. That must be you. They hoped it would be implemented that all trapeze artists and high wire acts were going to have to use a higher net. There have been so many accidents, and children having nightmares about what they witnessed." He gave her first his handkerchief, and then offered his hip flask, which she took a large gulp of brandy from. Tears streamed down her face. Letitia said, "I'll have to get back to see if my friends are okay. That swine Olroyd who owns the circus must have made Sal get back to work. He was in no way strong enough. That's why we were doing what we were doing." She sat in silence for the next 19 miles. The train slowed and she thanked Ezekiel for his kindness, took her leave of him and got off at the next station to retrace her journey. Ezekiel saw that another passenger had left a copy of the London Evening Post, and he saw the accident was on the front page. He picked it up and put it in his bag to show his friends. He had been so taken with her. She had something different about her. Letitia realised she was probably going to be back in the circus now for some considerable time. She would team up with Sal and help look after Colette. It was the least she could do. The diary and the letter would just have to wait. Little did she know she had just met the ancestor who had left Morrow Hall to Theodore Morrow. She also never knew that soon after their meeting he and his wife were to move to Africa, never to return, as the ship never arrived, sinking during a violent storm, or so it was said. 2024, Morrow Hall, 1st of July, 8 a.m. Thomas had hoped foolishly for sleep, but he hadn't slept properly since that day, nightmares wrenching him awake more than once in the night. He rose early and felt he was now ready to try out the device. Outside the conservatory the birds were singing, and the study clock ticked away. Through the conservatory window he could see it had the makings of a beautiful summer's day. He flicked the switches in the order the instructions had stated, exactly as he had set it on that fateful day, to travel backwards in time to 2 hours previously. He was still not sure if this was a good idea. He thought of the arrogance of Icarus, defying nature, daring to fly too close to the sun.
years was not enough. He wanted to fly above with the birds. And as he rose above the earth, he couldn't believe his eyes. Rose up in the sky, higher and higher. But he flew too close to the sun. It began to burn. And his wings caught fire, and he began to fall to earth. And all we can do is watch in front of our very eyes. We watch it vaporize. We flew too close to the sun, and now he's vaporized. We flew too close to the sun, and now he's gone.
He was sure if Letty had not disappeared, he would have changed his mind by now. But his mind was made up. He was ready to go. He set the machine in the ready-to-go position, and a very low hum began. Taking one last look around the room, he moved the significant lever to depart. The same one Letitia must have caught by accident. Quickly the sound emanating from the mechanism rose in sound, showing us a maximum on the gauge at the centre in front of him. One low hum became a loud electric buzz, then the smell of electrical ozone as the mechanism built up speed. The sounds increased more as the machine got up to speed. He used the trim controls to stop the device from shaking, just in time as the room began to shimmer in waves of transparency and coloured hues played with the static sparks which traversed over the machine and himself. It was getting hotter, and the sound was painful to his ears as it reached its peak. Then the sounds began to lower in pitch, to slow back down. Soon waves of transparency flickered once again and slowly cleared to reveal the surroundings. But he was not in the conservatory, but by the side of the lake. The machine sat at an awkward angle. In the distance he could see Morrow Hall. It was evening. He felt sick and he was shaking. He sat feeling nauseous for 5 minutes, which seemed like an eternity, when the device leapt again into life, all of its own, and repeated the process to take him back. This time the machine returned from its destination back to the conservatory. Thomas to himself, "Well, I'm still in one piece." He then felt a wave of nausea, but remained calm, and it passed. Thomas to himself, "It worked, God, it worked. It was supposed to be 2 days previous to this one, but it was evening, and according to his watch, it was 8:10 in the evening. I couldn't be sure it was 2 days or 20. I need to find a way to see exactly what time difference is in terms of days. More worrying is the fact that there was some lateral displacement of about 1 kilometre. Surely a bigger time difference would also make a greater location error. That's no good. I only wished I had a clue as to how it worked. There is a vessel with a liquid substance that looked metallic, possibly mercury. Something creates a vibration, and this glows with an odd greenish hue. That's all he knew. The sounds must be linked to this somehow. Sonic vibrations must be important. I'm no wiser, but I need to know.
We're all vibrations in a vibratory world. We spin, we circle upon our tiny, fragile world. Our thoughts expand beyond our immediate consciousness. I feel so small in the scheme of things, but I must digress. She said that she'd hold me while it all turns round. She didn't recognize that I was made of light and sound. The thrill of the vast expanse beheld in my inner sight. No one heard my exclamation of sheer delight.
He would check again the documents and the plans, and see if he could fathom any error on his repairs or to see what was damaged. He trawled through the documents and was up until the midnight chime struck. He was still none the wiser. He gave up. He was too tired. He decided to make himself a cup of hot chocolate and he put some milk on to boil. As he was waiting for the milk to boil, he saw the old trunk the builder had discovered in the old bricked-up section of the attic. He had only had a brief glance through. Now it seemed a little bit more interesting to him. He picked out a pile of documents and put them on the old kitchen table, mashed the drinking chocolate, and sat down. He sipped the hot chocolate and opened the photograph and postcard album. There were postcards from all over the world, with illustrations showing locations in England and somewhat looked like France and even Africa. They were held in place by diagonal double slits. One in particular was a faded photograph of the Sphinx and the pyramids. He eased it out of the slits and began to read the information on the back. General Chalmond had written how wonderful the pyramids were, and went on to give highlights of the tour he was on, adding, "You simply must come, Ezekiel." It was addressed to Ezekiel Morrow, Morrow Hall, Bishop Sutterton, England. He placed the photograph carefully back in between the slits, and towards the back of the album was a paper pocket, which he had not noticed before. It folded out, and it was full of newspaper clippings. The first was of a story of a mining accident, a few on political matters, one being about the Prince of Wales visiting a photo studio in Scarborough in 1880, another old one dated from 1890, which was about a charwoman, Gladys Philby from Harting, who had put all her life savings on a bet, winning a small fortune on Lucky Lass at 100 to 1 at Ascot. She said she had a tip from a stranger, a young lady from the circus. There was one old faded and torn one from 1880. The date was handwritten, as the article must have been lower on the page. The headline read, "Trapeze Tragedy and Hants." He put it on top of the others, took up the next to read, and caught his fob watch as he reached, sending a splash of hot chocolate over the previous article. He quickly flipped it up to run off the liquid, and hurriedly got out his handkerchief to dab the newsprint. He then saw the names of the trapeze artist who had broken her back, Colette Valland, and read the next few lines. Just days before this tragic accident, there had already been a previous accident where the other trapeze artist, a Letitia Morrow, had been injured. A cold shiver ran down his spine, and the hairs stood up on his forearms. Thomas to himself, "Wow, that's spooky. That would have been Letitia's name had we married." It then hit him, and tears ran down his eyes onto the clipping. That has to be Letitia. It just has to be. I must find her. Then he sat back in exclamation. Surely not, but could it? No, surely. It couldn't be Letitia. She packed in ballet because she was so clumsy and forever injured something or other. We always laughed at her clumsy mishaps. The first place to start. How many circuses could there be with a Letitia? That was a name she would use, knowing I would recognise it. Synchronicity, he mused. Could be a kind companion. Let's hope it was to him. He finally read the last few paragraphs. It has been raised in Parliament that such acts must have a safety net, and dangerous animals should have a cage between them and the audience. It went on, and Mr. Olroyd, the owner of Olroyd's Wonder Circus, was unavailable for comment. Thomas, out loud, "That's it. Got to be. That's where I'll start. Tomorrow I will take my chances and see if I can find them. The first thing I need to know is where the circus would be in that year." He decided the best place to travel would be to Morrow Hall. At least the location he would know, and he could work from there as a base to try and track down the circus. He left the trunk and stood up to put the plans in the tube, and they became lodged. After 2 attempts he lifted them out and shook the tube. Out popped a sheet of folded paper, torn on one side as if it was torn from a journal. On it was a handwritten note. "I have tried once again, and this time, eureka, it worked. The device travelled forward in time by a whole day. Also, the location on arrival was here in the centre of the conservatory, returning exactly to the point of origin. I must add to the plan a vital correction on the lower 4 location dials. Dial mark 1, move the dial 1 number to the left. Dial 2, move the dial 2 steps for every week, also to the left. And dial 3, move 1 step for every year to the left. Dial 4, to select centuries, move 2 spaces to the left. I have only attempted briefly to traverse into the future, the reason being I did not wish to encounter our travellers' enemies in the distant future at this time. Please read the journal. The actual date now set on the master rotating date cylinders, and more importantly the location cylinders, are more accurate now. One other important thing I need to mention. As I said, the watch-type device the traveller had that acted as a key, I placed in a compartment beneath the seat. If you leave the machine, it will not function until you are just feet away from it. Theodore Morrow. Thomas to himself. So that's the missing note I couldn't find. Still no journal, though. Thomas still needed to know where to find Letty. The internet was poor at the moment and the phone signal was appalling. He was looking for copies of old newspapers and circuses. It was all subscriptions to this and required visits to archives which he hadn't time to do. The phone reception was suddenly really poor, and then nothing. Thinking the network must be down, he threw the phone on the desk. It was no use, he simply had to go to that period where he knew the circus would be. He needed to be there perhaps a week before to traverse across the country from Bishop Somerton to Harting, or wherever. He still hadn't much confidence of the location moving ability, and he hadn't had time to experiment. He would just have to trust to fate. After much thought he chose to travel back to Morrow Hall. He had no idea what would happen, who would be in Morrow Hall, and would they welcome such a strange visitor in such a strange device. He decided to hell with it, and he began to set the controls to go. He sat on the device, he took one look around, and then he pressed the lever to leave. The roof faded in waves of transparency, the noise rose, the feeling of nausea. He was on his way back in time.
Nothing's gonna break me, nothing's going to get me down. I'm way above the stormy clouds, there's blue sky all around. There's nothing anyone can say to me that will bring me down. I can hear them, I can see them, they're way below, down on the ground. Sunshine Saturday, nothing matters day. Self-delusion is coming fine. I can dance in the stars if I choose to end the time. Sunshine Saturday, it's my day. You can all go and jump for what I care. It's my day today. Nothing's going to break me, nothing will get me down. I'm way above the stormy clouds and the blue sky all around. Nothing anyone can say to me that will bring me down. I can hear them, they're way below.